Uh, Ladies and friends, I'm here to talk about opportunities and challenges of entering the food processing sector in India. As you know, India is a very emerging market, holds about 1.2 billion in terms of population. Food is an essential requirement, and it's a growing market. So we are here to talk a little bit about the opportunities and challenges. There's a lot of things happening in India currently, and entering Indian market is a maze which requires to be went through. So I'm here to talk a little bit on the same. Before we start, I'm going to talk a little bit few slides with regard to who we are, so that you are aware. We, as in Suman Food Consultants till 2003 and Suman Project Consultants, we are a 46-year-old industrial consulting company based out of Delhi. We have done more than 500 projects in India and abroad, exclusively in the food processing sector. Our clients and projects are across. We provided hand-holding related to turnkey, every aspect related to setting up of the plant and projects. And I have the pleasure to say that we do have an office here in Germany through. We are represented and partnered with Enzymim. Pedram Dedari, Dr. Pedram Dedari is the biotechnology company through Enzymim who represents us, and we work very closely for more than 1.5 decades or so. We have our offices across India as well as in few cities out of the country. As far as our role and services are concerned, we provide complete hand-holding services related to entry into the Indian market, related to joint venture facilities, related to any interest in setting up of the plant and project within India and abroad, including technical, including regulatory, including quality control aspects associated with setting up of the plants or entry into the Indian market associated with food processing sector or the ingredients associated with the same. We have had the pleasure of pretty much who's who as the food processing clients. Our clients include Fortune 100 companies. Our clients include the state government, Government of India's, a lot of multinational companies, as well as a few MSMEs and SME sector companies also. So, having talked a little bit about us, I wanted to share a little bit about the Indian market and exactly where India stands within this sector. So if you look at the Indian perspective, you would find that India is a major source when it comes to the ranking associated with major commodities. For example, as far as world production is concerned, India stands and ranks #1 when it comes to okra, when it comes to ginger, when it comes to mangoes, peas, and even meat sector of it. We have shared a few perspectives related to the value in terms of metric tons that we typically produce, as well as our percentage share in the global market associated with them. Well, this is as far as the #1 ranking is concerned. As far as the #2 ranking is concerned, we are the second largest producer in the world for many number of commodities, including, to your surprise, would be bananas. I'm sorry, just the slide needs to move. Okay, so including, if you see, we are the #2 producers when it comes to garlic, when it comes to beans, when it comes to tea, wheat, tomatoes. We are the second largest producer in the world, and our percentage share is also in accordance to anywhere ranging between 10 to 20 odd and even 32% in terms of cauliflowers and broccoli. We want to give a perspective in terms of pulse production. It's an interesting dilemma India is in, because India is the largest producer of pulses in the world. I believe we have about 2/3 production associated with pulses. Unfortunately, we are also the largest consumers of pulses in the world. So net, what is happening for India is, even though we are a dominant player when it comes to food processing sector as far as pulses, we are a net importer of pulses in India. A little bit perspective and trend in terms of our production area and yield over a 5 years perspective on pulses. Well, the thing about India is you can't look at India as one single country, although it is a one single country, but it's like entire Europe put together. So when you look at India from a food processing perspective, you cannot really say and put a plant anywhere or enter into India into any particular place. It's like saying, ki, let me set up an olive oil extraction plant in Iceland. All right. I mean, that would not be the best choice in the world for olive oil production, right? So India is a big country, and each of the states has its own culture, has its own horticulture strength. So, for example, when it comes to ingredients, let me give you a perspective. If I have to put in India an onion garlic dehydration plant or an onion flake processing plant, I would not look at any other place other than the west coast side of it, which is the Gujarat side of it, where the onions, especially the white onions, are predominantly available. If I put an onion garlic dehydration plant anywhere in the country other than Gujarat and Madhya Pradesh, these two regions, I would pretty much be looking at a losing proposition or a losing. So there are certain aspects about India that you need to understand. Every place has their particular strength. I'll give you another example. Let's take, if you have to make or sell mango pulp and concentrate, all right? So there are more than 500 odd varieties of mango pulp and concentrate. There's more than 500 varieties of mangoes in India. But when it comes to mango pulp and concentrate, only 3 are most marketable, because India is a dominant player in pulp and concentrate, especially mango, and that's Alfonso, Totapuri, and Kesar. So if you have to put a plant in India for pulp and concentrate as far as mangoes are concerned, you cannot be thinking of any other belt other than these 3 western coast states. If you put a plant and project outside of these regions, you are looking at cost of production overruns, you are looking at cost pretty much going up, and therefore you are looking again at a losing proposition. So what we have tried to identify is the strengths of each state, so that you have a perspective of what kind of plant and projects you can look to set up as you look to enter or establish a plant in the food processing sector. As far as Indian economy is concerned, keep in mind that we are still, even though there's a lot happening in India and our GDP is about $2.2 trillion, but having said that, 60% odd, which means 2/3 people in India are still directly or indirectly dependent upon agriculture. It is a highly dependent agrarian economy, and the only way government of India is looking to progress and grow is by doing value addition to that horticulture base, and that is through food processing sector. I have shared a little bit perspective in terms of the processing levels. So if you see the processing levels in India, as far as fruits and vegetable processing is concerned, are pretty low. It is hardly about 2% versus about USA and China at about 23% or so. But we are going up. Keep in mind that the production of horticulture commodities, especially fruits and vegetable, are primarily focused towards tabletop varieties. So the problem that is happening in India, why processing levels are not going up, is because farmers are primarily oriented towards selling something to the tabletop, to the consumers directly, rather than to the processing plant. One exception I will tell you is something like sugar industry. So in India, sugar is primarily produced out of sugarcane, and when it comes to that area, you would see that most of the farmers are producing sugarcane for the processing plants themselves, and not for general consumer buying and selling. Well, I wanted to keep a perspective in terms of government incentive when it comes to horticulture production. So you would find that in India, government of India is giving some capital incentive associated with establishing and setting up food processing sector. So there is about a grant, they have put together about $500 million in terms of capital investment. So if you are looking to set up a food processing plant or enter into India through a joint venture collaboration or establishing a capital investment or purchasing an asset, then Government of India is willing to give you up to 5 crores, that approximately 750 US dollars, for setting up the plant and project in the country. After having shared a perspective associated with the horticulture base, because that's where we needed to start, let me share and give a perspective pertaining to the overall food processing sector. So India, in terms of food processing, is about a $258 billion industry when you put everything together, and by 2020 is expected to be about $350 billion in terms of sales that are happening. There are many things that are making this sector grow, and primarily is because of the large agrarian base that we have, because of the cost competitiveness we have. Keep in mind that in times of the cost competitiveness, the cost advantage matters in the country, and for anybody else looking to sell, it's important to have a good quality product at as less efficient cost as possible. India is one of those countries that provides for a certain sect, and I'll be going into each and every aspect of what is giving India the advantages as we go across. So this is a perspective into what's driving the food processing sector in India. So you would find that we have a strong domestic demand. The one thing that drives India is it is not only dependent upon export. The main things that's driving the Indian market is it itself is a consumer market. So it is a market of about 1.2 billion people who are looking for food, who are looking for ingredients, who are looking to improve the quality of life and wanting to be treated at par with the global citizens. Our exports are rising. We are more and more getting integrated into the global world. If you see about just 15 years back in terms of the kind of brands, the kind of companies that were selling, you would see a tenfold increase in the same today. So there's a huge number of companies that are selling themselves across India. We have a supply side advantage. So we are one of the few countries in the world which has entire 5 set of agroclimatic conditions. So we have desert, we have snow, we have plains, we have rainy areas, we have all kind of climatic conditions across, and we have the policy support. So any country cannot do or establish or progress if we don't have the policy support associated with food processing sector. This is a perspective into what is growing. Now, why I have shown this slide here is because everybody talks about the growth of India and how India is growing, but what is important is you have to understand how to position yourself when you look at the Indian market. So Indian market, India's per capita income is about 1,850 US dollars, all right? So you would say that that is not much. It becomes much when you add it all together in terms of 1 billion people. But keep in mind, it is for that very reason that if you are looking to succeed in India, you need to be sensitive towards prices. You need to ensure that on a majority, on the most parameter, most of the people are looking for commodities, most of the people are looking for products which are matching their budgetary expectations. So because you are not looking at, say if I am in US, my per capita income would be about $27,000, $30,000, but in India it's 1,800. It's growing at 8.5% per annum, but then the base is very small. So this is one mistake that a lot of people looking to enter India make. They try to understand the market from a point of view of overall rather than understanding from a point of view of basics. Well, when you talk about the food processing sector, we are talking about the entire gamut associated with food processing sector. We are talking about fruits and vegetables. We are, as in India, we are the second largest producer of fruits in the world, as well as in terms of vegetable. I think, if I'm correct, we are growing at about our 282 million metric tons of fruits and vegetables that we have. India is also the largest milk producer in the world, and the production is estimated at about 146 million tons in terms of milk. We are the second largest, we are the largest exporter of buffalo meat in the world, and the second largest exporter of goat meat in the world. As far as marine products are concerned, let me tell you, India, as of this fiscal year, exported $6 billion of seafood and marine exports across the world. And India produces more than about 200 million tons of grains. If you look at the Indian economy, you would find that food processing has about 14% contribution to the overall GDP of the country. The overall GDP of the country is currently about $2 trillion, and food processing is about $258 billion. So approximately it's about 13 to 14% of the total GDP that Indian food processing sector holds. Now, why I brought this slide up is primarily to show the trend that is happening currently in India. So if you see the unorganized sector, the small scale sector, holds a major aspects associated with food processing in the country. So about 70% of all the food that comes on the table as far as processed food is concerned is coming through the unorganized sector. Only 30% is actually the percentage. So what it tells is there's a huge opportunity for organized sector to come in and play, because the trend is for companies from going from unorganized to organized sector. The trend is for companies to go from small to big, and the trend is to integrate yourself as much as possible. If you look at state-wise contribution of the food processing sector, you would find that as I mentioned, India is a big country, so the southern state of Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu are major places where companies set up. These are considered to be progressive states also. And you are looking at Maharashtra is on the west side of India, and Uttar Pradesh is on the north side of India. So just a perspective in terms of processing levels and state-wise contribution of how many percentage of contribution of food processing companies across Indian sector. So important thing is, how do you ensure that to succeed in India, right? That's an important aspect to understand. So if you are looking to enter India or looking to sell in India, then you have to look into going up the value chain. You have to look into, there's a transition happening. For example, milk is very readily processed. There's a high processing level happening. But in terms of lactose-free milk, there is hardly available in the market, right? So if you want to go in terms of taking advantage of Indian food processing sector, you have to look at value addition to your particular product. For example, again, I'll tell you in terms of milk or even to the minerals getting added. Indian milk is added with vitamins, Indian milk is added with minerals. So you try to make sure that if you are looking to offer a product, you are looking to offer a value added product which gives you one little advantage, which makes that much ingredients more acceptable into the Indian market. Second is the low cost strategy. As I mentioned, if you have to succeed in India, you have to see how best to offer your product at a particular price point, because consumers in India are price sensitive. This is a fact, and if you want to take advantage, you want to see how best to offer a quality product at a certain cost advantage to you. One thing is, the Indian market will give you volumes for sure, but as far as the price is concerned, it has to match the Indian expectations. So typically, if you see a lot of companies when they are looking to enter India, in my personal opinion, the best strategy and the most successful strategy that has been seen is through joint ventures, through finding a JV partner associated. There are a couple of strategies. You can look to appoint a distributor in India, and typically a lot of companies try to do that also. But then building a distribution network across India and in a country as big as India is a big challenge. Building a brand is a big challenge. It is not easy. So having said that, people typically look for JVs, where they are looking for the JV partner to put in a certain stake and bring in some contribution associated with it. A lot of successful examples. For example, Starbucks tied up, even for Starbucks, when they look to enter into India, they tied up with Tatas, as in for their coffee. Del Monte tied up with Bharti Enterprise for baby corn in terms of export, and LT Food tied up with Future Consumers. Even PepsiCo, if you look at, and Jubilant, if you look at, there are a lot of tie-ups that typically happen. Even the Fortune 100 companies, even the multinational companies are looking to India in terms of JV opportunities, because understanding the ground and understanding the pulse of a country is extremely, extremely important. Well, this is in terms of the value chain across the food processing sector. So if you see, the opportunities are in each and every segment of this value chain. So if you're looking to India, you can look to take the opportunity when it comes to inputs. In this case, you can look in terms of seeds, in terms of fertilizers, in terms of farm equipments that are looking to be used. I've also identified some of the major companies that are associated with each of this segment sector. If you look at production, obviously there is participation in terms of farmer, cooperative and private companies. They are all participating in the Indian market. In terms of procurement and storage, so this is a major challenge in India, because cold chain is growing and growing very, very fast. In India, up to a decade back, the amount of cold storage and the gaps associated was significant. And in terms of processing, so you are looking at, I mean, if you take any company, any of these major companies that you see around here, India becomes a major, major market for them, whether it's Cargill, whether it's DSM, whether it's any major company that you can look for. They are all present in India, either through direct offices or through JV partnerships or through appointing distributors across the sector. So this is a perspective which I wanted to share in terms of what food processing sector India is attracting. If you see, India attracted about $7.3 billion in terms of FDI, in terms of direct investment in food processing sector. As of last year, $725 million in terms of foreign participation, or foreign companies directly participated in the sector. If you look at the government point of view, you would find that government itself, in India there are 5-year plans associated with planning and growth of an industry. The last 5-year plan gave about $3 billion associated with food processing sector and its growth. And we have tried to identify and share with you where the spending was allocated. So if you look, about 44% was allocated towards encouraging industries to set up their own plants, or set up their own projects, either through JVs or through direct investments within the food processing sector. There is a major requirement of R&D, food safety associated, and also in terms of infrastructure, warehouses, dry warehouses and cold storage that are required, and that's where the government of India is spending. So anybody looking to participate has to have that these are the priority sectors where government is looking to grow. I wanted to share this a little bit associated with where exactly the investment or private equity participation in India is taking place. So if you see, there have been a lot of PE or acquisition or strategic takes that are also happening in the country. So you have had PE participation when it looks to milk, when you look at snacks, when you look at seasoning, when you look at rice, when you look at food delivery. They are all, these are acquisitions that have been happening across, and the deal value of each acquisition is also being mentioned. Again, when you look at food, you would find that there is acquisition happening in dairy, wine, in terms of liquor and other agribusiness. Agribusiness in the sense of also when you look at the fertilizers, the machineries, all those also associated with that. So this just wanted to give you a perspective on what these acquisition opportunities are. Um, just to share with you, if you through a JV or through a participation set up a plant in the country, Indian government gives you a 5-year tax holiday. All right. So no taxes on any income that is generated for 5 years, and from the 6th to 10th year, the government of India gives and charges only 25% of the applicable tax. So in the 6th year, if you have to pay 100 rupees or $100 in terms of 100 euros in terms of taxes, you only have to pay 25 euros, which is 25% of the applicable taxes associated with that. In addition to it, there are number of state incentives, because each state, and there are 26 odd states across, and each state is giving a certain incentive to the benefit of them. Most common are in terms of stamp duties, because when you buy a land, when you try to procure a land for setting up of a plant, there are certain duties that you have to pay, which the government of India is giving. And now, especially now, there is GST in place. Like how in Europe you have VAT, so you have VAT on food, you have VAT on other products. We call it GST, which is goods and service tax. It is a single tax across nation. So what was earlier happening was each state had their own different taxes. So what was happening is when a good was moving from, say, a port into northern side of the country, each state was looking at it with a different tax structure. That has all been done away. Now there is a single tax across the entire nation. I want to share this with you for a simple reason, that this is the challenge. The challenge is that when you're looking to enter the food and when you're looking to put a plant in India, you have to go through 15 different permissions from different government departments. So that is a big challenge when it comes to setting up, and this is true especially for the small and medium particular enterprises. But now each state is going and putting it a single window system, a single entry system associated with the food processing sector. So this is very important, and which implies that if you look to set up a plant and a project in, say, Punjab, which is in northern state, in that case you are looking to go to a single department, getting one single permission for all these aspects associated with it. That way you don't have to go from pillar to post associated with getting permission from different departments associated with that. That is a facility Indian government has just put in place. Again, as I mentioned, in terms of food processing sector, also government of India has given about $500 million in terms of encouraging the food processing sector in India, and gives a capital incentive for food processing sector across the country. Well, nothing happens without a proper support infrastructure. So it therefore becomes very important. I just want to share this with you, because if you look at the Indian exports, all right, because we talk about exports, you would find that India is primarily exporting most of its product to the neighboring countries and Middle East and Southeast Asia. I'm not saying they are not contrary, but in terms of accessing the US, Canada and Western European market, in terms of food exports, the penetration is still less. So, this is an important trend I wanted to share with you. So my perspective on that is, India is yet to be a dominant player when it comes to quality conscious part of the world. It does export. Exports involve a certain quality, a certain standard. But in terms of Western world penetration, India needs to get in there. India still also needs to make effort when it comes to encouraging and putting R&D or research and development infrastructure associated with it. I will give you an example. In India, there are about 100 odd labs across the country, and I would say those are not, there requires to be many more. 100 odd labs which are accepted in terms of the standard, in some of the equipments, and have the NABL certifications associated, where an FSSAI, like how you have US FDA, India has Food Safety and Standard Authority of India. So any FDA inspector can go, take a sample, and then send it to those 100, any one of the 100 odd labs across the country. For those, in case you have not, you can more than welcome. So this is again a perspective on those lab. Government of India is giving, so if you're a government enterprise or an affiliated enterprise looking to set up a food testing lab or a biotech testing lab in the country, Government of India gives 100% capital investment subsidy for setting up of that lab, setting up of the research and development center. If you're a private sector looking to set up a lab in the country, then Government of India subsidizes by 50% of the plant and machinery equipment, and 25% of the capital infrastructure that is required associated with it. This is again a priority when it comes to setting up of the labs. This is an infrastructure that is interesting, because the current cold storage infrastructure in the country is about 31.8 million tons. Now, what is interesting about that fact is, while the figure is good and significant, there is a lot of opportunity associated with that too. 36% of that cold chain infrastructure is an infrastructure with 1,000 or less than 1,000 metric tons of cold storage. Further, India being a big country, 65% of that infrastructure is only across two states, which is Uttar Pradesh and West Bengal. One is on north and another is on the east side of it. And if I can put it through, 90% of that cold storage infrastructure is dedicated to only one single product, and that's potatoes. So the need of the hour is, you need to have a multi-commodity, multi-chamber cold storage infrastructure with a complete cold chain link associated right from farm to fork that is required in the country. The good news is the sector is estimated at about $6.5 billion currently, and is growing at about 8 to 10% in the country. This is a perspective on that cold storage. So what I've tried to do is to show across, the red reflects the areas where multi-commodity, multi-chamber cold storage are missing and are required in the country. The green are the areas where there is some kind of an abundance, and the yellow are where it's primarily skewed towards one single commodity associated with it. So if you look at it, the southern states and the eastern states of the country are primarily areas where you would require a significant cold storage infrastructure or opportunities associated with that requires to be put into the country. These are again some opportunities associated with it. Why I wanted to share this with you is, suppose you're looking to do something in apples, all right, or suppose you're looking to, from an ingredient perspective, let's say you're looking to put a pectin extraction plant, all right, from pomace, all right. So you have apple pomace coming out and you're looking to put a pectin extraction plant. You would find that if you are looking to put a plant in any place other than Himachal, or let me show you, other than this location, Himachal or Kashmir, because these are the places where you have a lot of apples available, you would find that's the right place to put the product in. So every commodity has a certain advantage. I have tried to show this because you can't just think of India as one commodity, put a project or plant anywhere, or have an advantage across the country. Every states have a certain advantage. So certain indicative interventions or value additions that are required in each state for each commodity, and what are the tentative locations, I have tried to share it in this particular slide. So what are the challenges associated with the Indian cold chain infrastructure? So if, So what are the challenges associated with the Indian cold chain infrastructure? So if you look at it, there is a severe shortage associated with cold chain capacities, as only 25% of the capacities are multi-commodity oriented. Also, if you look at, there is a lack of standards and protocols, because in terms of handling, in terms of heat loss, all right, it is important to have right standards. That is important. So therefore, not many people working on cold chain infrastructure understand the concept of heat loss. There are a lot of few international companies that are now coming into India and trying to take advantage of this situation. Also, we have some, I mean, the situation is improving on every day, but at the same time, there are power cuts, and cold chain infrastructure requires 100% power. So people therefore use the backup, power generation backups, which are there in terms of handling these cold chain infrastructure. Again, this is a little bit perspective on the cold chain facility. This is a little bit different because when it comes to cold chain, Government of India is giving about $1.5 million in terms of capital intensive subsidy. If you remember, what I mentioned in the earlier slides was that Government of India was giving up to $750,000 in terms of subsidy. But in terms of cold chain, it is about $1.5 million. When it comes to India, India is blessed from a point of view of its location. It is geographically located, it has all the 5 agroclimatic conditions, and it has ports across the Indian region. 95% of what India trades in volume and 70% in terms of value happens through maritime transport, happens through these ports. So there are 12 major ports across the country, and depending upon where you are looking to push the product, and there are 200 minor intermediate ports that are there. Just to give you a perspective, these 12 ports handled about 650 million tons in terms of cargo in the recent year. This is a perspective, having talked a little bit about the cold storage, I wanted to share a little bit about the dry storage facility, because dry storage involves the grains that are there, the rice, grains associated with that. So India primarily talks, when it comes to in terms of a storage capacity, we have about 945 million metric tons, or shall I say 94.5 million metric tons in terms of storage capacity across the country. Most of this is primarily owned or leased by a company called Food Corporation of India, or FCI. They are the major people who are leasing. It's a Government of India enterprise, and they are doing it through lease factors associated with that. Just to give you a perspective, Rajasthan, Maharashtra, and a couple of states have major associated, but the 23% of it is across 23 odd other states in the country. So there is some kind of a skewed balance associated with dry storage facility also in the country. Well, this is a perspective in terms of the advantage that the Government of India is giving. So I just wanted to share it for you so that you can understand. Keep in mind that when it comes to grain, Government of India gives what is called minimum support price, MSP. What is an MSP? MSP means that when it comes to an agri commodity, whatever is produced, you get a minimum support price. You, in terms of the farmer, gets a minimum support price for that particular commodity. So that's a support that Government of India typically gives. Now, when it look at food processing sector, Government of India is also doing what it's called a food park infrastructure in the country. There are about 175 food parks across the nation. And when you look at these food parks, This is in terms of an investment, in terms of an infrastructure of about 18 to 25 million dollars. But idea is that if you put yourself in that food park, you get certain advantages from a point of view of incentives, from a point of view of investment associated with that. There are schemes and grants associated with food park also. So this is a perspective we wanted to share on the Indian food trade associated. So if you look at the Indian food trade, while the global agri exports is about 1.75 trillion US dollars, India's share of that global agri export is about 2.5%. Major countries that are exporting are US, EU, Brazil, China, Canada. And while India is one of the top 6 or 7, but still there is a huge opportunity associated. It's ranked 6th in terms of global exports. As far as import is concerned, India values and imports about $24 billion in terms of the commodities, and its share is about 11th and about 1.5%. Wanted to give this perspective because where Indian food processing sector stands. So in terms of total exports, India exports about $309 billion in terms of total merchandise export, of which agri products and allied products hold about $38.7 billion. So that's about 12.5%. Most of these exports are happening through two organizations that monitor the same, which is APEDA and MAPEDA, which is Meat Processed and Agriculture Processed Export Organization. And this is a perspective in terms of what is major commodities that are getting exported from India. So if you see whether it is rice, rice holds about 40% market share in terms of the total commodities exported. This is about, if I'm correct, $21.5 billion in terms of total, and their percentage share associated with that. Then you have guar gum, then you have maize, you have other value-added and miscellaneous preparations associated with that. And this is the export destinations that are there across where India currently exports their product, which is through ASEAN, Southeast Asia, West Africa, North Africa. And as I mentioned in one of my slides, the percentage share associated with that is extremely small when it comes to Western world, or when it comes to EU, or when it comes to US or Canada region. This is a perspective when it comes to the imports. So India is a major edible oil importer. It imports about $14 odd billion in terms of edible oil. This is in terms of palm oil. This is in terms of rice bran oil. This is in terms of olive oil that we are doing. As I mentioned, also in terms of pulses, although we are the largest producer of pulses in the world, India still imports about 5 million metric tons of pulses across. And this is a perspective I wanted to share with you. I know it's lunchtime, so I'm not going to take a little bit more, but just 5 more minutes, a few more slides to put this through. So what are the noble trends that are happening in India? What is it that is expected, or what and how can you take advantage of the Indian market or scenario currently? So if you see, people's tastes and preferences in India are changing. More and more consumers in India are looking to be treated at par with the world consumers. So this is primarily because of rising incomes. This is primarily because of urbanization. We have a very young population and nuclear families. So trends are changing. We also have a lot of international companies that are looking to enter India, whether it's Danone, Kraft, DSM, Cargill, Mondelez, Heinz, you name it, they are all present in India because of the market opportunity. There is also rising demand of Indian product in the global market. So there is a lot of products that are Indian, whether it's terms of traditional foods or specific ingredients that are getting exported out of India to the rest of the world. And there is obviously a higher consumption of horticulture commodities. Keep in mind that there is a trend in the country towards healthier and organic products. all right. Organic production in India is a little bit more expensive, but still there is a trend associated with healthier products and options. This is what I wanted to share with you. So when you're looking for edible oil, Indian consumers are looking for low cholesterol edible oil or edible oil with certain vitamins associated with it. If you're looking for snack food, people are looking for multi-grain snack food associated with it. Anything that involves, which is why in the country today, the nutraceutical segment, the health foods is growing in India, all right. And there is a demand for whey protein powder, there is a demand for maltodextrin, there is a demand for a lot of innovative ingredients that you can be using for that healthier trend that are currently happening. Packaging also plays a major influencer in the food processing sector. So if you look at it, you are looking to enhance the carryability of the product in the food product that we are looking at. And there is a shift in expectations. So earlier processors were producing what was convenient for them and selling it to the consumers. Now the trend has shifted from processors processing and selling in accordance to what the consumer expectations are. So there is also a change or a migration of this trend that is happening in food processing sector. Keep in mind that India is, the one thing that is there is the seasonality factor associated with India. And that is for any commodity, that is true. But so for example, if I have to have mangoes in India, it is a 2-month crop, right? Or if I have to have a lemon, that's also a few months. So what do you therefore do to ensure that I have a 2-month or a 3-month crop, and the crop or the commodity as an ingredient or ingredients associated with it are available throughout the country? So people, when they're looking to set up plants and projects, are trying to put it a single line multi-commodity plant associated with that, so that they can process on the same line multiple commodities. I'll give you a certain example in terms of ingredients. If you are looking at setting up an essential oil or an oleoresin extraction plant, so I'll be looking to set up an essential oil or an oleoresin that is healthier, you know, in terms that I'm looking to extract curcumin for anti-cancer research, or I am looking from turmeric, or I am looking to extract capsaicin from chilies for pharmaceutical industries. So I have to see how to position myself from that point of view. And just to end it up, I like to share a little bit of the organic perspective that is there. So you would see that while the organic market in India is about a $72 billion industry, Indian share in the organic is about 327 million. India has about 25 certifying bodies for organic, and the organic produce is sourced from about 3,500 individual, 2,000 plus farmer groups. There are about 1,000 odd processors in organic production, and about 1,200 exporters associated with that. Some of the main products that are exported in organic are the soybean, cane, sugar, basmati, tea, etc. So, and by the way, there is traceability associated with this organic part in production. So with that, I know I took about 5 minutes or more than my allocated time, but I wanted to share a perspective on the same. Thank you so much. In case of any questions, I'll be more than happy to take. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Sagar Kurade. Ladies and gentlemen, UBM, as the organizers as Food Ingredients Europe, also gives you access to the Indian market. We organize at 2 locations in India, Food Ingredients and Health Ingredients India. Last month we were in Mumbai, and next year, 30th of August, we will organize Health Ingredients and Food Ingredients in Delhi. But before we finish, I will give you the opportunity to ask some more questions to Sagar Kurade, or you can also meet with my colleague, Samir Mithia, or myself. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. If there are any questions, I'll be more than happy to take. Thank you, gentlemen, ladies, friends. Thank you so much. I am also available offline in case anybody has any thoughts. My contact details are here. In case anybody wants to take or share, I'll be more than happily take any questions. Even after this event, if anybody has anything, they can send me an email. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions associated with any aspects of entering India. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Bye. Thank you.